Tell me about your time at Buckingham Palace.
Yeah, so I worked there, worked for the royal family.
Did you tell them that you were a white supremacist?
I'm not a white supremacist.
So
I
tell me
reject
what you
that
are
label.
then.
I am an ethnocentrist. I believe in supporting and advocating the interests of my people, which is a people currently being driven to the verge of extinction.
When the story broke that a young man tied to violent far-right groups had been working inside Buckingham Palace, it didn't just shake the country, it forced Britain to confront a question many refused to consider. Was Harry actually right when he said the system couldn't protect his family? For years, people dismissed Harry and Meghan's warnings as exaggeration. They were told they were imagining things, being dramatic, stirring trouble, overplaying their hand. Meghan was labelled emotional. Harry was called weak, paranoid, or too California. Their concerns about security were mocked endlessly. But this scandal rips the curtain down and shows just how precarious things really were behind the palace gates. The man caught at the centre of the storm is Matthew Gravel, 26 years old, clean-cut, polite, working inside Buckingham Palace as part of the Royal Collection Trust. A man smiling at tourists by day and promoting extremist propaganda by night. ITV News uncovered that while wearing his official uniform and walking through royal corridors, Gravel was also deeply immersed in extremist online networks. He wasn't some fringe lurker posting anonymously. He was openly aligned with far-right groups in both the UK and the United States ideological circles, with a long history of violent threats against Harry and Meghan specifically. This wasn't a subtle red flag. This wasn't something hidden. Gravel openly described himself as an ethnocentrist, a term extremists use to justify racial supremacy. He repeated the conspiracy theories that have inspired violent attacks worldwide, including the so-called replacement myth. And somehow, even with all these public breadcrumbs, he passed palace vetting. Let that sink in. An extremist walked the same halls where royal families live, work, and entertain foreign dignitaries, and no one noticed. Meanwhile, Harry and Meghan, who were being directly targeted by similar extremist ideologies, were told they were being dramatic for asking for better security. To understand why this is such a chilling discovery, we have to look back at what the Sussexes were dealing with long before they ever moved to California. In 2019, a British man was imprisoned for calling for Prince Harry to be killed, describing him with racist slurs because he dared to marry a biracial woman. Meghan was attacked with vile language across social media, targeted by organised hate campaigns and weaponised by groups who used her name to fuel racist propaganda. These weren't isolated internet trolls. These were networks connected to the same ideological beliefs that Gravel aligned himself with. Harry knew exactly how dangerous those threats were because he had lived through what happens when warning signs are ignored. He grew up watching the institution protect the Crown's image, not the individuals inside it. He witnessed how his mother was pursued, dismissed, and ultimately failed by systems that were slow to adapt. So when he said he was afraid history might echo itself, he wasn't speaking symbolically. He was speaking from trauma, from memory, from clarity. That's why their decision to step back wasn't theatrical. It wasn't impulsive. It was survival, plain and simple. Yet the very institution that failed to detect an extremist within its own staff was quick to criticise Harry when he requested police protection during visits to the UK, even when he offered to fund it himself. They said security wasn't guaranteed. They said protocol didn't allow it. But protocol seems strangely flexible when you look at who was allowed access. This scandal exposes something deeper: the gap between image and reality. The palace can brief, polish and posture, but even the gleaming facade of monarchy can hide dangers when systems fail to evolve. And when ITV exposed Gravel's extremist ties, the palace response? A short, icy statement. No apology, no outrage, no reassurance to the public, just a bland refusal to comment. Yet when Harry and Meghan spoke about racism, suddenly the palace found endless energy to correct them, contradict them, distance itself, or clarify their claims through anonymous press briefings. The silence now speaks louder than anything said back then. For years, the tabloids and certain commentators painted Harry and Meghan as dramatic, privileged, and unreasonable for stepping away. They were accused of seeking fame, money, Hollywood glamour, anything but the truth. The truth was always simple. The institution was not equipped to protect them. And this scandal proves, beyond question, that they were right. If a young extremist can slip into the palace workforce unnoticed, imagine what Harry and Meghan were facing when they were receiving direct threats from extremist circles. The extremist at the palace might not have had direct access to the core of royal operations. But the very fact that he could be vetted, hired, uniformed and stationed inside those walls tells us everything about how outdated the system is. Security today is not just about background checks. It's about monitoring ideology, online footprints, affiliations, coded language. Extremist networks rarely leave criminal records, they leave digital trails. And the palace wasn't looking for those. That is the most frightening part. Months after his palace employment ended, Gravel was seen at far-right gatherings in Texas, arm in arm with figures connected to racial militancy. People who openly celebrate violence, people who've created propaganda targeting the Sussexes. And yet Harry, a prince who literally served in a war zone, was told he didn't need full protection. It raises the question, was the palace truly unaware or simply unprepared? Either answer is terrifying. Even more alarming is how the British press helped fan the flames that made Meghan such an easy target. They dissected her background, questioned her motives, portrayed her as a disruptor. Every negative headline, every dog whistle phrase, every exaggerated scandal fed an environment where extremists felt validated and emboldened. It didn't matter how kind, articulate or charitable Meghan was. To people driven by hatred, she represented everything they feared. And the media's treatment of her echoed, amplified and accelerated that fear. Harry understood the danger. He saw what it did to his mother. He watched the patterns repeat. And he refused to let his wife and children become casualties of a system still operating like it's the 1950s. When his request for security was denied, it wasn't about comfort. It was about keeping his family alive. Critics scoffed. Commentators mocked him. Headlines painted him as entitled. But now that we know a man with extremist affiliations worked inside Buckingham Palace, those criticisms feel embarrassingly hollow. Harry didn't abandon duty, he redefined it. His responsibility was to his wife, his children, and their future. Not to an institution unwilling to modernize. Not to a monarchy more concerned with optics than safety. Leaving wasn't betrayal. Leaving was courage. And now, because of this scandal, even some of Harry and Meghan's harshest critics are starting to admit they understood the threat long before anyone else did. This isn't just a scandal about one man. It is a warning, a flashing red alarm, a sign that the monarchy must completely overhaul its security protocols or risk disaster far worse than embarrassment. For the Sussexes, however, the lesson is already learned. They built a life far away from palace walls because those walls were never as protective as people imagined. They chose sunlight, freedom, and safety. And as the world absorbs the shock of this scandal, one truth stands immovable. Harry and Meghan did not flee the monarchy. They escaped a structure that could not keep them safe. They trusted their instincts. They protected their children. They broke a cycle. And now the facts vindicate them fully. The palace may hope this story fades. But for the Sussexes and for anyone paying attention, this moment is a turning point. A moment that forces Britain to confront uncomfortable truths about extremism, transparency, and the myth of royal invincibility. Harry once said he feared history echoing itself. People rolled their eyes. But here we are, witnessing the exact environment he dreaded, a system blind to danger until it explodes into public view. And now, with the Sussexes safely thousands of miles away, the world can finally see what they were trying to say all along. They weren't running from responsibility. They were running from a system that could never protect them. And that decision to put family above protocol, above tradition, above public pressure is what real courage looks like.